Hello, everyone. So I have the unfortunate timing of being between you and lunch, so I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. So my name is Siobhan Rockcastle. I also go by Chevy, which is both easier to spell and pronounce. And I'm an associate professor in the Department of Architecture at the University of Oregon, and I will be presenting with my
My name is Kyuho Ahn. I'm an associate professor of interior architecture at the U of O. And this is my first time to be fully engaged in the research symposium on mass timber. So I'm very excited about it. And also very interested in the human experience. I see a lot of great research topics from the forest management, engineering, and the manufacturing and all the constructions. I'm very excited to share our research about the human experience.
And I should preface that we're sort of do research in lighting and human factors, so we are also not traditionally mass timber researchers. So this project came about by sort of considering if we're just looking at the cost of structure only, mass timber can be more expensive than steel or concrete buildings. But when you start to factor in the cost of interior finishes, there are potential cost savings that are not always accounted for in that sort of comparison. And fewer finished materials can lower some of the material, labor, and maintenance costs associated with a full built product. Many market sectors, as we all sort of are aware in this room, embrace the visual appearance of mass timber elements, but exposed assemblies can create challenges for lighting integration and coordination with electrical and mechanical systems design. And wood may be desirable in some market sectors more than others. We lack a kind of understanding between space use types, how much exposed wood might be seen as positive between different sectors. And so while wood provides a biophilic appearance, it also results in lower surface reflectance, which can reduce daylight penetration as well as indirect bounces from electric lighting systems that can make it harder to achieve certain sustainability and wellness ratings. And concrete and steel structures are often encased in painted drywall and have higher surface reflectances from white paints. And so we're often getting lower surface reflectances from exposed mass timber surfaces. So there's also some human factor considerations for design in mass timber. Obvious opportunities are the biophilic associations. We also have a very warm finish color that can help shift the appearance of cooler, more energy efficient light sources like LEDs. And there are fewer secondary structural elements, which can lead to higher floor to ceiling and higher window placements on the facade. Also things like surfaces naturally absorb moisture and have some antimicrobial properties. But it is difficult to hide electrical, fire suppression, and mechanical components. And so those are often either exposed on the ceiling, or we have to introduce secondary drop ceiling elements, which then would cover up the parts that we're trying to expose. And so that kind of warm color can contrast daylight, and it can also shift warmer lighting sources to begin with. And we also have heard a lot about acoustics, which we'll mention in some of the interviews that we've been doing. So our research questions are really, how does the amount of exposed wood impact perception of space quality, specifically between different space use types? How is lighting perception impacted by these lower reflectances of the exposed wood surfaces? And which lighting conditions are the most preferred when we do expose wood on the ceilings and walls? And the last one we'll sort of continue to talk about. So we have been looking at healthcare, residential, and office, and doing an experiment where we're comparing these three different space types. I included some images here, which are really just projects that have been recently in the news or sort of just neared construction or still in the design phase. But really there's a big interest across market sectors in integrating mass timber, both in the Pacific Northwest and across the country. So our project really is outlined. We started with some interviews with designers and engineers that are working on mass timber projects, trying to understand the decision process in the selection of material finishes and issues of coordination, especially between electrical lighting and fire suppression systems. We did an experiment using virtual reality, which we're going to show a bit today, to collect subjective feedback and compare spaces with different interior finishes on the ceiling, floors, and walls. And then we're also not going to go as much into the simulation phase, but also looking at when we start to vary different quantities of wood, how that impacts lighting performance. So we spent a lot more time than originally intended in trying to simulate photometrically accurate wood grain. This is like a niche in the lighting field, which you could just keep sinking in. So when we typically simulate lighting environments in the virtual space, we can apply a material texture and surface reflectance qualities, but mass timber has a lot of variation in that when you start to introduce wood grain, as well as like natural variation that occurs in the board. So this is just an image on the right of our research associate, Alan Mahich, who had to develop this like randomization process of assigning wood grain and then like dipping into different species, not species, but the sort of color variation that we get within the species, so that we can then create these detailed visual environments to use in our experiments. We also did interviews. So I mentioned we have 7 participants in here now. We have 3 more scheduled, and these come from a range of different firm sizes and professional titles. But some key issues that have come out of this is really like acoustics is a common issue mentioned by designers, that they often have to integrate things like baffles to deal with that. Lighting is also mentioned as a common challenge. So people saying they avoid indirect lighting because of that lower surface reflectance and that sort of loss they get, as well as the sort of color shift of the wood. And also people talk about cost, but I think people are interested in arguments that could help them sell this across just the cost of the structure, so including finishes. There's definitely an interest in integrated solutions for lighting, but there's some concern about how to transport things if we start to embed systems into panels and then we're transporting them and they have, let's say more fragile components, that there might be losses associated with that, but that is going to dovetail into our next project, which Kyuho and I are going to be working with Corey Olson on. All right, so we created these detailed virtual environments. This is a unrolled 360-degree image. So this is not what you would have seen in the VR headset, but we compared this kind of baseline where we're going to call no wood, which has white ceiling walls and a concrete floor with the structure encased. This is our residential scenario with a cool lighting color temperature. And then we have an all wood scenario, which is structure, walls, ceiling, and floor is all mass timber. We had a white encased drywall ceiling with a concrete floor, exposed wood walls in structure. And then we also had the kind of opposite where the white walls were encased in drywall and the ceiling was exposed mass timber with a concrete floor. And we were doing these scenarios to try to ask the same kind of questions and see like how much wood starts to shift certain perceptions. We also looked at a kind of warm lighting scenario across all of these. So we can compare the effect of color temperature. We've also done a healthcare waiting room. So people in our experiment get placed into one of 3 groups. They either see a residential space, they see a healthcare waiting room, or they see an office environment. They do not know there are different groups. This is just you get randomly placed in this, and then you are answering the same kinds of questions in each of these spaces. And on the side, we've also been looking at the actual quantitative impact of these different finishes on the overall lighting quantity. So you can just see comparison of when everything is white painted, you're getting much higher average lux levels than when you have everything in wood. This is just like a quick snapshot of us, popping through the scenes on the computer. You would see them as fully immersive wrap scenes in the virtual headset. And when people are in there, we're asking them questions about brightness perception, perceived comfort, whether or not it feels appropriate for the space use type, if it feels natural, how clean it feels, how hygienic, is it appropriate for the space? Would you want to spend time here? If you were stuck here for a while, how would you feel about it? Things like that. And Kyuho is going to talk through some of the initial findings, but I will preface this is ongoing. So this is a real small sample size. We're about a third enrolled on the data, so we'll have more coming on this.
So to give you some basic background of this data set, the preliminary finding that we have is there's a lot of more questions in here, but there's kind of few items that we're very interested in to see whether there's a patterns exist. So the first one is perceived quality of space. So in here, we see the perceived comfort, the perceived quality, the inviting quality, and then whether they want to spend time over there, and whether there's a possibility of the anxiety reduction. So those kind of the component we are looking at, and here as a perceived quality of space. So those numbers, those are the mean numbers. So we kind of collect all the data together. But here, the total data set is about 22 samples. And when you take a look at each individual business sector, which is residential, office, and healthcare, we have only 7 data sets. So it's not really relevant to calculate all the statistical analysis. So we are looking at the only the trends. And we have more data coming in, so we're going to have a more accurate the analysis
Yeah,
available.
this is the Cliff Notes version and no statistics fully embedded, but give you some trends because we're excited about what we're seeing already.
So this is overall. So it is all combined office and healthcare and residential together on the left-hand side. Here, so first one is no wood, the all white, and then this is all wood panels, and this is the mixed one with the wood walls, and this one is the wood ceiling, but the white wall. White wall compositions. So here is the difference is all significant. So here, of course, the wood structure has a better performance in terms of the perceived quality. Right?
Yes. That's good. This room likes to hear it.
So here you can see some sort of a trend here. It's all wood. So we are interested to looking at what's happening here. So currently we don't see any specific differences among them, but the more data coming in, so we're going to see the more trends inside of there. We are looking at the several different items in here based on the market sectors. So one thing that we are interested in is right here. Right here. So when you see there's kind of similar over here, but we have a very different responses there. So between this particular just all wood versus wood to wall and mixed one. So we're looking at that data. So possibly this is not significant because of that's a repeated measure. So when you see here, you see there's some sort of more pattern. You see some sort of different pattern over here, something like that. So we're looking at what happens if you collect more data.
I think you have to advance on here.
Yeah. And this one is about we are particularly interested in kind of perceptions about the cleanness and hygiene quality, because there's some sort of misperceptions about this kind of characteristic in healthcare environment. So we're kind of looking at kind of their perception, but interesting one is we don't see any differences among all those 4 different settings. But when you see here is the most interesting here is healthcare part. So it's kind of very similar, but when you look at the healthcare, there's some sort of data differences exist among them. So we're very curious about what's really happening in terms of the surface quality and the perceived the hygiene.
And kind of contrary to like anecdotal things that we've heard, people actually do see the wood as being cleaner than the white, which was not what we were expecting to see. So that's also, again, we'll expect to see this more significant as we add in.
Right. So this one is you can see the perceived performance about the cleanliness and hygiene. So you can see the office and residential more details about it. And
yeah, I might have mixed up that label. This is the productivity on the left and then the livability
so
on the
that
right.
questions we are asking is about the productivity in terms of the particular sectors. We are looking at a particular the performance, the human performance in each sector. So in office, we talk about what is the perceived about the productivity in that environment based on different surface types. So you can see, definitely we can see the mass timber, the finishes has a better performance in here. Although in this case, it looks like there is a significant, but actually it is not significant because of the small number. When you look at some sort of more the Banfaroni corrections applied, actually there's no significant level achieved. But the more we have a better data collected, I think we may see the more clear patterns in here. And then we can see the previous one.
I think we're probably behind time.
Yeah, so residential one is kind of similar. So we're looking at some sort of more data into it. And the next one is the healthcare part. So what is the perceived the quality of care? So now here we have a little of data here, but at this time we don't have any significant differences among different kind of finishes. So we're looking at the more data.
Right, but we do think as we start to see the sample increase, we're going to see this trend, which we've seen across, which is that any amount of wood is outperforming the no wood, but there are some opportunities in here because especially if we can get some of the same biophilic characteristics or perceptions while still having some amount of drywall that gives opportunity for us to like hide different systems in some surfaces, but still have exposed wood
So
in
one of the
others.
things that we discover is between all wood versus mixed one with the wood wall portions. Those two data set has a very interesting dynamic there. So we see the very vast the responses about the the surfaces with the wood wall. So we're looking at the data for the futures.
Mhm. And then just last real quick about this, because I think we're over time. So we are continuing to run this experiment. We're going to analyze it between space use types, also look at the effect of lighting color, which we've not been able to do yet. And then we are starting a new grant, which kind of builds off of a lot of the feedback we've gotten in the interviews, which is going to look at sort of integrated systems in panelized solutions. So starting to look at embedding lighting and acoustic treatments. And so we will be doing that together with Kyuho and Corey, and also building off of a design studio that Kyuho will be leading in the winter with undergraduate and graduate design students to help.
So the student will explore some possibility of interior system assemblage that is related to the mass plywood panel system.
Thank you very much.